No.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Domino. I'm chair-elect of the commission, and we wanted to get started. Dr. Chung is unable to be here today. It looks like it's 8 o'clock right now. Our first agenda item is the public comment. So we'll now begin the portion of the business meeting to take public comment. The purpose is to allow members of the public to directly address the commission on issues of public concern. Please refrain on providing comments on pending or open investigations or disciplinary cases. We will not be answering questions or responding. Staff will be available after the meeting to answer your questions. Please understand that although the time period for comment during the business meeting is limited, the public can attend and provide comment at commission committee meetings. The public can also contact staff during normal business hours. We welcome written comments as well. Amelia, do we have people who wish to speak?
We do have one hand raised, Maria Higginbottom.
Okay, just note for the speaker that you have 2 minutes to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and who you represent.
Hi, can you hear me fine? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the commission for their recent work on the opioid interpretive statement. As a patient who suffers from chronic long-term pain from multiple diseases, I've seen the issues that have ensued in our state since the guidelines, CDC guidelines, were issued in 2016. The statement that you have written and are working on right now is very well written, and I commend your efforts. My concern is that as a patient for the last 6 or 7 years, I cannot tell you how many doctors I have talked to that have not seen the original 2019 interpretive statement. And I was wondering if there is a way that the WMC can ensure that physicians will read this interpretive statement, if there's a way to set up some type of receipt verification or acknowledgement. The direct issue is basically touching every physician in our state so that we can ensure that they read the statements issued by the WMC, thereby noting they understand and acknowledge the responsibilities they have to all patients, whether struggling with pain from a rare disease or suffering from addiction. I have personally heard from dozens of legitimate pain patients who have been abandoned and forced tapered. Many have filed complaints. Many have been forced to the street. Some have committed suicide. So this is a very important issue. And I just wanted to let you know that I respect the work that's done by the WMC to untangle the issues brought forth by the guidelines, the CDC guidelines, and we just have to find a way to reach these doctors. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else, Amelia, who would like to speak?
No.
This concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. Again, you may provide written comments at any time. All right, the next item is the chair report, where Dr. Chung has nothing that he asked me to report. The next item is the consent agenda. There are 2 items here. One include the minutes from the January 13th, 2023 business meeting and the agenda for the March 3rd, 2023 meeting. And so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Anyone want a motion? Thank you, Dr. Murphy. How about seconding motion? We have a second. And can we approve these consent agenda? Yes. Anyone opposed? Okay. The next item is old business. Melanie DeLong, Executive Director, presented outstanding performance awards. Or can you do this?
I'm Dr. Domino, I think you have
Am I on the wrong one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. That's the problem with finding the right thing. I will have to look at it on my computer, sorry. I tried to print it out. Yeah. Okay. The new business is discussion of the Washington Medical Commission statement, discussion of WMC support state protection of MDs and PAs who prescribe mifepristone and provide reproductive health care statement, possible revisions and growth.
Morning, Commissioners. So just some background on this. I believe last week before Friday and all of those changes that came down, we were asked by the governor's office to consider putting out a statement clarifying the status of mifepristone as well as the status of practitioners who might prescribe it. So we did draft that and put it in front of the executive committee who agreed to bring it forward to you all. Since that time, there have been a number of changes. So first off, there were two conflicting rulings issued, one in Texas, one in Washington on Friday. There was also a DOC bill that allowed the Department of Corrections to stockpile and distribute mifepristone. It's going through the legislature right now. And I was one of the testifiers on that bill, essentially saying the same thing as in the statement. The status has not changed for prescribers in Washington. It's the same as it was before the rulings. So because we've got the drug in state, so that's that. I want to point out the italicized statement is actually from a bill that I believe has passed the legislature. It's on its way to the governor's desk right now. It's House Bill 1340, and there was a comment about including gender affirming care, but that's a full quote from the bill. So that's the only reason that's in there. Any questions?
Do we need to vote on this?
Yes, this would be a vote. Just for your information, the Nursing Commission is considering a similar statement at their May meeting. And EY decided to decline to take it forward at this point. But I think there's probably going to be some more negotiations on that.
Do we have any discussion about this? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Say aye. Anyone opposed? I thought the statement looked great. Great. Now I have the right spot on my computer. So old business, committee and work group reports. Anyone have a report from the committee? I know Dr. Chung. Mike, do you have a report or is that coming later in the agenda with the HERO committee? Later on. Okay, any other committee have any reports? Right, we do have the nominating committee. April, are you the head of this committee?
Not sure that we have nominated a head committee, given that there's only 3 of us. We met and deliberated over a variety of potential applicants and invited a fair few commissioners to consider being nominated for the executive committee positions. And for various reasons had a number of commissioners decline. And the list that we came up with appears to be somewhat self-serving, so we apologize for that appearance, but it's not the intent. But we would like to nominate for the chair position, Dr. Domino, for the chair-elect position, Dr. Murphy, and for the officer at large position, we have 3 nominees, Dr. Wones, Mr. Lopez, and myself.
Great, and so we will be voting on this in our next meeting, is that correct? Currently 26th, it looks like it's the date of that meeting. Okay, thank you very much. rulemaking activities. Who can give us that 6.3? Request for expedited rulemaking receiving portions of WAC 246-010-330.
Hi. So what has transpired on this is we've got a little bit of a time crunch for this particular one. We were notified by the University of Washington that some of their licensees would not in fact qualify, or sorry, well, some of their trainees would not in fact qualify for a license with Washington Medical Commission due to the existence of a rule that takes your 24-month GME requirement that's in law and sort of enhances it a bit more. It says it has to be 24 consecutive months and no more than 2 programs. And so that is not in keeping with how UW does a number of their programs. And so an example is their radiology program, where you do 1 year, they're an accredited program. It's the same program that it allows, this process allows someone who say it's an IMG to be board eligible at the end of their training, which is for us kind of the gold standard. You don't want to create that second tier system for IMGs if we can help it. And so what they're doing is they're doing 1 year accredited, 1 year not, 1 year accredited. So they're getting 24 months of accredited GME, which is the standard of the law, but the rule itself provides that they have to be considered consecutive. And that's where they're running into a problem. So they've got people who are finishing the pilot programs now and will finish in roughly June. And so the request here is for emergency rulemaking to repeal that one section of the law of the rule, which will allow us to revert simply to 24 months of GME. Okay.
Great, thank you for explaining that. Is there any discussion of that item? So can we have a motion to initiate rulemaking on this subject? Second? Thank you. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. Policy report, Ms. Blake.
Good morning. The policy committee met yesterday, and you can see on page 18, starting on page 18, are the interpretive statements that we reviewed on opioids. And I would like to, there was quite a bit of conversation on some changes after reading Dr. Turman's paper, and I would like to turn this over to Mr. Farrell and Dr. Domino to give you an update on what their recommendations.
Ms. Farrell, can you start?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about the interpretive statements first?
What would you like to start first in your report?
You can go ahead with the interpretive statements.
Sure, thank you. So when the commission adopted the opioid rules back in 2012, we issued an interpretive statement to try to explain the commission's philosophy on how practitioners should view the opioid rules. And then the rules changed a couple times. So this is an interpretive statement that goes back to 2012. That's been revised a few times, and it came before you last meeting. And then you voted to send it to the Secretary's office, and it came back from the Secretary's office with some very good changes. Some of those are highlighted in red. And the other changes there are from some edits that I made, and that a number of edits from Karen Kohlmeyer, who provided some excellent suggestions on how to make this more clear. There's nothing really substantive. It's mainly an update and adding clarity and just better wording. So since there are so many changes, we're recommending that you send this back to the Secretary's office. By statute, they have to review all interpretive statements and policies. And then it's going to come back to you, hopefully at the next meeting, for you to finally adopt it. If you have any recommendations on better wording, please let me know.
Any comments or suggestions? Hearing none, Mr. Farrell, I'll go to the interpretive statement, and then we'll vote to recommend this return to the state for further review.
Yes. And I should say Christopher sent me some, found some issues with the language that I could just incorporate. I think we need to go through them this morning. They're fairly minor, but they're important.
Thanks.
Again, this document, both these documents will come back to you probably the next meeting, maybe the meeting after for another review.
So do we want to go over Mr. Terman's comments or go ahead and just recommend that these go back and then come back next meeting?
Yeah, just be clear, Dr. Terman wrote a paper on comparing the new CDC guidelines to the commission's rules. That paper is there, but he wasn't commenting on the interpretive statements specifically. I mean, they're intertwined, but it's a separate issue.
Okay, then can I have a motion to send these back? And then we'll have, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Second. Just a moment, Micah.
Because you are a standing committee, you don't need a motion.
Okay, well, thank you then. Thanks everyone who was going to put their hand up, and I am done. Thank you.
Still need to vote, right?
You still need to vote. Mr. Bailey can be the second one.
All right, thank you then. All in favor of sending those back, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Thank you. That concludes my report. Go ahead, please, Mr. Farrell.
Yes, so Dr. Terman has asked by the commission and by the agency medical directors to take a look at the new CDC guidelines on treatment of pain, which were issued, I think, in November of 2022. And so he wrote a 19-page paper, which is in your packet, very thoroughly describing the differences between the guidelines and the commission's rules, which the commission's rules are, I think, are now almost 4 years old. He concludes that there's no real significant differences, but the policy committee discussed this last night. And the issue is, do we open up rulemaking to revise the rules to be more consistent with the CDC guidelines? And the policy committee identified 3 areas last night that might be worthy of revision through the rulemaking process. And I'm going to refer to Dr. Domino, who's an expert on this area, to briefly describe what those 3 areas are.
Thank you. Well, just so for commissioners who don't know, Dr. Terman is an anesthesiologist, pain medicine physician at the University of Washington. And he was a pro tem for 8 years on the commission. So we discussed this and looking at his very extensive document as well as his very clear charts, we came up with recommendations for rulemaking in 3 specific areas. One of them is dealing with the exemptions. The CDC guideline, if you look at table 1 in your packet, it exempts sickle cell disease pain. And that was not exempted in the state of Washington. We recommend that, we'll send it back for rulemaking because sickle cell disease pain is horrible pain and it should be an exemption. I wasn't involved in the initial rulemaking here in our state. I'm assuming it had to deal with just the lack of perhaps awareness due to lack of prevalence of sickle cell anemia in our state. But we are seeing more and more cases of this as people move into the state. The other thing we recommended was on recommendation 5, the comment that Dr. Terman has in the Washington State opioid prescribing rules is in contrast to the new CDC guideline. In our state rule has no definitive statement that not all patients on chronic opioids need to be tapered. I mean, there are people who've been on chronic opioids for years. They are living normal lives, having their pain controlled. And so we need to consider that have a specific statement that not all patients need to be tapered in there. And again, this will go back for rulemaking, so the exact language will come back. The final thing we recommended changing, deals with the urine toxicology. That's recommendation number 10. One of the things is, in his chart, table 1, it doesn't really hit at the issue. But in the old days, what would happen if someone would have come up with a drug screen that would show a substance other than was being prescribed, they might possibly be discharged and dismissed from their care, which is really terrible for someone with chronic pain, especially if you're in an area, it's hard to get in to see chronic pain physicians. There have been suicides happening when people have suddenly been dismissed and then they may go through withdrawal. So we recommended that number 10, that in our rule that we can have rulemaking there to say more than like the guideline that the CDC has, that you don't just automatically dismiss somebody. You have a discussion with them, you figure out what's going on. I mean, it could even be in a laboratory error, right? So those were the 3 areas that we on the policy committee felt should be subject to rulemaking. There were discussions about the other recommendations in the Washington Medical Commission rule, and it was felt that those were fine as they are. Do we have any comments about that? I think so. The ask is one to go back for rulemaking on those 3 areas. Exemptions, number 5, Mr. Lopez, number 10.
Yes, hi, I just want to make sure that we address the issue that the guest, Sigma, mentioned the issue of, and we discussed this policy about how do we inform the physicians? And I don't know if Dr. Domino or.
We did talk about that, and to do a best email, we don't have all of the email addresses available, and we also talked about a mass mailing, which once again would cost an awful lot of money, and we may not have all the correct addresses. So it was agreed that we would put that on the website. It is on our website. And also, just as an aside, the DEA is requiring physicians now to also take a course, 8-hour course on opioids. So that's something else that providers will need to do, which I think will also assist them in understanding opioids. Amelia, were you? Okay.
We also said the newsletter as well that goes out, people do read that, and it should probably be in more than one edition of those because sometimes people don't see the newsletter.
So I think with the DEA also jumping into this, providers will get some education. Micah.
Sure, just wanted to clarify the intent just for everyone. This is not a broad-based open up the whole opioid prescribing. This is a very limited scope authorization request. So that's important to know, both for you as well as our stakeholders. With respect to notifying people, that's not so much the issue with respect to receiving office comment. It's the confirming that they read it. How do you make sure that every practitioner read it and they read the whole thing? And the confirmation piece, they're just not. And so in response to that, we would certainly put it in our newsletter, put it out on our social media channels on our website, work to partner with WISMA and WAPA, and perhaps WISHA. They certainly, that's a hospital association, they certainly were interested. And whenever you open up rulemaking, quite a few people get interested in that. So everyone from Healthcare Authority, TSHS, to all of our association stakeholder partners, and there's a big listserv network whenever agency does rulemaking, and this kind of gets passed around. And so that will certainly get the word out. But the newsletter is probably the best option to try and get something in front of our licenses.
Dr. Yu.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the, this revised rulemaking on those languages and policies. I think this is really patient-centered to address. From the complaining, patients complain sometimes when we see people afraid of being punished because of a variety of reasons they broke the current rules. So I would like to also see that reach out to the patient population who use this drug so that they will understand, during the rulemaking, let them know so they would understand what maybe change down the road, or then they would have a better communications with their providers. You know, it'd be better to, you know, in compliance with the collaboration with using the medication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
Yes.
Could you clarify for me on the rule about the urine tests, if it's positive, about the process and the change? At what point does the provider, in trying to avoid also polypharmacy, if somebody's on drugs and you start finding some other drugs in the urine, at what time does the provider responsible without, getting the problems with it?
So one of the things that has been written recently is that you don't just dismiss somebody, say you find marijuana in there, or say you find a benzodiazepine, or say you find cocaine or something, right? Marijuana is one that, so there's something that wasn't necessarily prescribed by the physician who prescribed the pain medication. We've had complaints and we've heard stories of patients who've been dismissed by their physician or PA for having that, and that leaves them with nothing, right? They potentially won't have access to any pain medications. It can take a long time to get into someone else's practice to prescribe. And so we thought that it is something, Micah was saying, that's something that our public has complained about. And we've heard, I've been on the commission for 4 years, I've heard of cases where this has happened. And I think it used to just be an old way of dealing with it. The current recommendation from the CDC is that you don't just dismiss them, you have a discussion. Is their provider really what went on? I mean, what is this? Is it a mistake? I mean, labs make mistakes. Is it a one-time thing? And having that discussion rather than automatic dismissal. So that's kind of the thing. And what would exactly happen would be up to the patient. And of course, that will involve the public as well.
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, one of these meetings, I'm going to get recommend versus vote right. So when I say vote, it's recommend. When I say recommend, it's vote. So where are we going with this one?
We need a vote.
Okay. And the motion then to,
The committee made a motion yesterday.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a second.
Okay, a second, please. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And Mr. Farrell, I think we have a report from the HERO committee as well.
We did a quick report, and the HERO stands for High Reliability Organizations. And the idea is to make our organization more highly reliable by having more consistent processes. At the last meeting at noon on Friday, we had a meeting with the investigators to talk about language in letters of cooperation. We had a good presentation by Frida, the director of investigations, about the investigative process. We had a lot of questions answered. It's very educational. Then we had a discussion about communication between investigators and commission members, how important that is. And we know you're all busy people, but the investigators really like it when they can get input from you on investigations, if you have any. Then toward the end of the meeting, we started talking about the need for consistency and training of new commission members, onboarding, and then decided that that would be a good subject for the next HERO meeting, which is today at noon.
I just want to say that sitting on the HERO committee, I really appreciated the collaboration last meeting with all the investigators. It was nice to see them face to face and be able to figure out the best way that we can work together so we can move these cases along. So much appreciated. Thank you. And that, I believe, ends our report. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Now, the next agenda item is member reports. Do we have anyone who had some member report? Melanie, you have a report? Staff reports.
Sorry. So this isn't really a report. This is going to be sort of a shout out to Dr. Hyde, who we were going to honor today. He is retiring after 31 years of service on the medical commission. And although he couldn't be here, there are a couple of letters that with your indulgence, I would like to read because I think they're important. And I think it would be nice for you to hear some of the accolades that other folks think about Dr. Hyde. So with your permission, I would like to read these, if that's okay. All right. So the first letter is from Dr. Shaw, the Secretary of Health. And it says, Dear Dr. Hyde, I want to personally thank you for your 31 years of service and dedication as you retire from your role protecting Washington's patients. I'm going to get really emotional here, sorry. And improving the medical profession. You played a pivotal part in defining best practices for physicians and physician assistants over the past 3 decades for prescribing opioids, performing office-based surgeries, and providing informed consent, just to name a few. A true pioneer in medical regulation, you became part of the regulatory staff even before the Medical Disciplinary Board and the Board of Medical Examiners were combined in 1994 and helped these two boards merge successfully. You were instrumental to the Medical Quality Assurance Commission throughout its 5-year pilot program and continue to bring your expertise and experience as it transformed into the Washington Medical Commission of today. The WMC is known nationwide as a leader in medical regulation, including its groundbreaking work in establishing trauma-informed sexual misconduct investigation and case reviews, implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives throughout its organization and regulatory practices, and adopting a policy regarding discrimination in healthcare. You have been there every step of the way to work through a myriad of issues and develop innovative solutions to tough situations. On behalf of the Department of Health, I wish you all the best in your retirement. You have earned it. Know that your legacy will live on for years to come. Thank you so much for helping make Washington one of the best places to practice and one of the safest places to be a patient. Best, Dr. Shaw. Excuse me. And then lastly, I would like to read a proclamation from your chair, Dr. Jimmy Chung. Whereas we are here today to express our special recognition to Dr. George Hyde and to honor him for his distinguished 31-year career with the Medical Mission. And whereas Dr. Hyde began his career with the Commission in 1992 and has spent more than 60,000 hours reviewing over 50,000 complaints as the Commission's medical consultant. And whereas Dr. Hyde has supported the Commission in all of their endeavors, innovations, policy and rulemaking and interpret statements, as well as bringing the best baked goods and other dishes for every potluck. And whereas Dr. Hyde will be missed both professionally and as a friend, and has displayed the highest example of character, ethics, morals, and unselfish service. And whereas on behalf of the Medical Commission, I want to express my sincere appreciation to Dr. Hyde for his dedication to the safety of Washington patients and wish him much happiness as he begins this new exciting chapter in his life. Now, therefore, I, Jimmy Chung, Chair of the Washington Medical Commission, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 14th, 2023 as George Hyde Day and urge, all commissioners and staff to join me in congratulating Dr. Hyde on an outstanding career with the Commission and to extend to Dr. Hyde and Sue, his wife, our best wishes for happiness and good health in the future. Proclaim this day, Dr. Jimmy Chung. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Those were wonderful stories.
So for my staff report, I'm just gonna put this up, but I was also supposed to have 3C skills is not able to make it, and the idea was we were gonna finally start on PSP letters. So we at the PSP would like to inform you that the Washington Medical Commission has completed its review of complaints on against you and found there were no viable complaints. We therefore convened a special panel of physicians, physician assistants, and people off the street to consider the absence of evidence. After careful review and many catered meetings, the commission closed the case without any action. We have a request, however. We usually recommend educational opportunities to respondents. However, given the lack of complaints about you, we would like you to develop a few educational opportunities for us to recommend in the future. We at the PSP have put together a few ideas for courses. And the following titles are a work in progress. They are as follows. Quote, Bob Ross and Ain't Got Nothing on Me, a course on workplace positivity and serenity by George Hyde. Worth 5 credit hours if respondents can stay awake that long. A pediatrician's guide to putting up with adults acting like children. A course on how to always take the high road, Dr. George Hyde, for 20 credit hours. A gardener's guide to communication. Start with the plants and work your way up. A course on mastering civil communication by George Hyde, 300 credit hours. How to grow vegetables to get the best flavor. A guide to stoically endure being roasted at your own retirement ceremony by it's only 4.5 credit hours because we want a live roast and not burn. And the WMC's goal is to help you become more informed and more aware of how much all of us enjoy working with you. While the panel chose to close the complaint with no further action, it is the hope of the panel that you avoid this situation in the future where you find yourself working for 31 years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Any other staff reports? Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. We've made a few changes to our complaint intake unit. In January, we promoted Chris Waterman. He was our case manager. Case manager, that is correct. He is now promoted to case manager supervisor. And we have a new staff member who's joined the unit, and I would like this opportunity to pass it on to him to introduce her to the commission.
Good morning, Commissioners. I want to introduce Tanya Everly. She is our newest complaint intake coordinator. She is taking on 2 roles temporarily as our triage and coordinator. She joined us in mid-March, and she's doing an outstanding job, and I'll give her the opportunity to briefly introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her.
Hello, my name is Tanya. I came from DOH, the COVID program at the Washington Commission, and I'm having a fabulous time. It's fascinating. It's I have a wonderful teacher, Chris. So yeah, I'm from Tumblr. In Columbia, my whole life. I have 3 kids.
Any other staff reports? Okay, our Attorney General report, Chris.
I'm being promoted, I promise I'm not the Attorney General. So as much as there has been a considerable amount going on in the legal world over the last couple of weeks, that was all happening before Heather went on vacation. So she had nothing to report, and I have nothing to add to everything else that's been discussed this morning. Thank you.
Any other items at all? I don't see any more on my list over here. You do? Yes.
I just want to thank everyone for putting those reports in here. I know there's a lot of time that goes into that for us to read here, and I just really appreciate it. I do go through them and read them. And Rick, I like all the summaries you put together in there. So I just want to say thank you. They don't go unnoticed.
Agreed. Second, to thank you as well. I'm sure we're all very grateful about all the staff that's being done for the commission. All right, well, we are done early. It's 8:40 a.m. Open sessions on this thing, it says 10 o'clock, is that correct? Yeah, so there's time to have breakfast, time to chat, relax, whatever. Anyway, thanks everyone. We'll adjourn the business meeting.
I know. Everybody thinks I was the dragon. I need to know that, like,